In Python, we have the ability to do a lot of testing of strings, and we want to look at some of those tests. Now, you might ask, well, why would we ever need to test a string? Well, here's a very simple application we want to start with. It's just a main function. We have a value x where we're getting an input from a user. We're going to convert that input into a number, and then we want to do some simple addition and print it out to the screen. And nothing very complicated. You would think, well, how could this ever fail? Well, let's take a quick look at that. If we run our application, someone says, give us a number, we type in 8, and we get the value of 15. And you think, well, that's just what should happen. That's obvious. Where could a problem possibly occur? Well, let's run this application again, and because we never know what a user is going to provide, let's look at an example. I'm going to type in 10, but I typed in the word 10 instead of numerically 10. And if I run this, now all of a sudden I get an error. And this is an example of where and how and why it becomes important to test our strings. There's a lot of different types of tests that we can do. One simple type is to test for a digit. In all of our tests, whether it's for a digit or some of the others we're going to look at in a second, we get a true-false result. So we could have like a while loop and just check to see, is this a digit? And if it's not a digit, then we can keep on looping until they give us a numeric answer. A simple form of data checking that's going to prevent an exception like this being thrown. So let's look at how we would change this real quick. First, we're going to give it a default value. And here we're just going to check by using while not is digit. I type in 10 numerically, it works. I type in 10, written out the word, and it's going to ask for a number. And it will keep doing so until I give it an actual value. So this becomes a real simple, easy way to do that error checking and make sure we don't have an issue. In this example we have here, we have a lot of different types of tests that we're going to run, which is pretty cool because there's a lot of things that we can test for. And we're just going to look at them real quick. I have a variable that I'm going to get from an input string in my main function. And from this, we're going to be able to tell some information about it. For example, is alnum allows us to test if this is a true, false, for is it only made up of alphabetic or numeric characters. That means it's going to look for any special characters, commas, periods, etc. And if those are found, it will return false. Inside this, I'm going to check to see, is it a digit? I don't have to test this outside of it all in the same level of testing because I know if I got to this point, I can only be alpha or numeric characters or maybe a combination. And so I'm checking to see, okay, do I only have numeric characters? That's is digit. If I'm is alpha, it will only be alphabetic characters. So those letters A through Z. And inside of that, I can test further and check to see, is it uppercase or lowercase? Now, the nested if statements, once again, just make this more efficient. Because if I know I'm dealing with numbers, why would I check to see if I'm dealing with uppercase characters? Now, there may be a time where I only care about if I'm an uppercase character, and so I don't have to do those other tests. But in this case, because we're doing all these tests, we're looking for this. Of these, we also have a is space, and the is space is just looking for white space characters. This typically is going to be things like a space, tab character, or maybe even a carriage return and line feed. So we got a lot of different types of tests that we can run. Let's go ahead and run this example real quick. We'll use the word example, and it can come up and tell us a couple of things. Based upon what we put in, it knows it was only made up of letters and numbers. Further test, it was only made up of alphabetic characters, and then it was only lowercase. If I run this again, I know that I'm made up of letters and numbers when I enter 42, and then I'm checking to see if it was only made up of numeric characters and it was true. If I use a test with an exclamation point, notice that it failed all the previous conditions, which means that it had at least one special character. Now, we can look at these character by character if we want to, or we can look at it as a whole string. Sometimes that is very important for us when we're running different tests and things like that. And here's a perfect example of how we're going to do that. Now, in addition to checking for conditions inside my strings, I also might want to be able to modify a string. Luckily, Python allows it. And this is a simple case of where we want to find something like that. Let's say I want to check to see if a person wants to continue. So I'm asking them, do they want to continue? And I have it stored in a variable. Well, I could test for if capital Y or if lowercase y. But that is a bit of work. It's two conditional tests. I might forget to write something, and that's going to cause a problem. So I can rewrite that test real simply. I'll say if, and then I use my variable .lower. And .lower forces it to go to lowercase. Now I only have to perform one test, and it's less likely for me to make a mistake because I've gone through and forgotten to do both tests or anything else like that. Likewise, I could also say again .upper, and upper would convert to uppercase, and I only need to test for my uppercase value. If I have a large menu I'm going to choose from, I'll do this one time early on, so I only have to do one conversion, and then I'll use a series of if statements to go through all my different possible options that I will look at. And that's a real common way to simplify handling a text-based navigation menu. We'll look at doing other string manipulation in Python in our next video.